So, as Graham has said to us there, we had our workshop yesterday on the modelling side of things. We have identified and modelled for business as usual and blue-green infrastructure network response, and the change in the mapping and the outputs that we saw was pretty impressive. So one of the main things we identified in the Carlingford catchment was that there was a lack of knowledge for the farmers and maybe an ability to find the information they might need to implement these solutions. We had previous farmers in interviews and stakeholders kind of pointing out to us that there was a lack of information. And we really needed to demonstrate to the farmers that it is a win-win for them. The nature solutions don't necessarily have to cost. We want to show that it will not put them in any worse position than they were, and also illustrate to them that there are other other positives that come for the farm business that don't necessarily have to affect their profit margin massively, but that do promote them or prevent any negative kind of side effects. So yesterday, Graham kindly showed us the opportunities within the area. We have a lot of the water storage, blue dots up towards the north of the catchment. We have the belts of woodland and peatland down the south. We can see that these kind of fell into 4 hotspots of opportunity. In the north, the corridor through the middle, and either side of the lock down the south. These were broken up into different blue-green infrastructure networks, which looked like they would be more possible or more beneficial in these areas. So we see in the north, the riparian zones, the leaky ponds, the agroforestry, and the wild bird cover. Much the same for the middle corridor. And in the south, trees, planting, leaky ponds, and peat restoration. So this is our working draft version of the toolkit. It's still in action, and we're here to speak to you to get some feedback, hopefully. And it's basically just to earmark information for the farmers, make it easy for them to access, and pull together different information sources and put them into one easy to find place. Here we have our jazzy introductions here. A lot of the blurb you may have seen before associated with the Alice project. Just laying out the catchment to the farmers if they're not used to this, explaining some of the terminology, and again trying to make them proud of, a lot of them already are, proud of where they're from and where they farm, but just highlighting how diverse and wonderful the area is. So I've already said we've spoken to the people in the workshops, and this is from their feedback what we've produced. So nature-friendly farming. Nature-friendly farming is the concept of farming in a sustainable way. We want the farmers to work in sync with the environmental systems. These farmers already know that that is how it works. They're willing, and we hope that this information can provide them with a platform to go on to implement these nature-based solutions. We move on to wild bird cover, one of our first of 6 that we've earmarked as potential BGINs in Carlingford catchment. There are several important bird species found within catchment. These birds are lacking often a food source throughout the winter, and we want to push for provision of wild bird seed mixtures on farmland. This is a simple way to boost your income, but also protect the bird species. So the format here will show follows similarly throughout. Why is the habitat important? What is wild bird cover? Why is it good for the farm? And why is it good for nature? So the bird cover is a grassland ideally next to thick hedgerow. We want to set that aside for habitat for wild birds. The good for farm, which is probably one of the most important aspects of this. It will boost the farm income. Participants are eligible for payments for services provided and eco-marketing opportunities. I've spoken to farmers during interviews down in the catchment who have raved about the wild bird cover, and for their open days said that one of the most positive feedback they've got is from the wild bird cover. Importantly, it supports the birds. The loss of food supply in intensive agriculture has been a real problem for farmland species. It just ensures that they can survive through the winter and leads to a greater species diversity and richness. We want these to create wildlife corridors. Let the birds move from area to area. So if we're able to link these up from the north to the middle corridor in the south, down by the loch, that's the aim. Why is this good for the community? As I said before in interviews, a lot of farmers who have implemented this have said that it's such an obvious measure that people can see as they drive past. So it's rich local biodiversity. We're earmarking to the people that for funding, we need to be able to point them in the right direction. We've got DAERA and the RSPB. And for those that are eligible for a payment, the EFS scheme provides £590 per hectare under Grant 2, and in the Republic of Ireland, the GLASS scheme, funded by the Rural Development Programme, is €900 per hectare. And we've got in a few little fun facts throughout the thing, or throughout the toolkit, just pointing out that the wild bird cover can support the grey partridge, the turtle dove, the song thrush, the tree sparrow, the linnet, the yellowhammer, and the red bunting and corn bunting. So just practical little things that the farmers might be interested in. I've pointed out there before and after artwork of the wild bird cover. So we intend to use render illustrations just to really show the farmers how these will sit in their farmland and also within the wider farmland and Carlingford catchment. Peatland restoration is extremely important, and there's a large push in Northern Ireland and the UK. Particularly in Northern Ireland, we're maybe a little bit lagging behind. So this is something important to highlight to the farmers. It is a massively important habitat for carbon sequestration, and damaged peatland emits carbon, and although it doesn't look like much, it has numerous environmental and ecologic functions, be it habitat provision or preventing climate change or preventing flooding. We know that peatlands provide or protect unique biodiversity, sphagnum mosses and bog cotton and butterflies, amongst others. But importantly, when the peatland is degraded, the water quality suffers, and it can cost, for example, in Northern Ireland water up in the Silent Valley, it can cost a lot to treat the water in a private sense, but the costs at the minute, the costs associated with fire risk can be quite massive. So we're looking at quite a lot in and around the Mourns, providing peatland restoration at multi-benefit. So we know that it can mitigate fire risk and also return to an active bog. In Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, we've pointed out to farmers, can provide advice. DAERA and the RSPB as well, involved heavily in peatland restoration projects throughout Northern Ireland. And although only 1% of funding is provided by the public sector, 12% by the private sector, and 83% by government support schemes, we see this is increasing quite rapidly over the coming years. So although we only have these funding sources mentioned for the farmers within the document, this document will be live, and we intend to update this with any new revenue streams that might be accessible by the farmers. And that applies to all of the blue-green infrastructure networks we're looking at here today. Secondly, a simple fact for a farmer, down the bottom, 2 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide are emitted from drain peatlands worldwide. So it's just kind of highlighting these simple facts and providing the organisations and the direction for the farmers to go. So riparian zones, we have luckily been out and seen some of these in action and some really good examples. So throughout the toolkit, we want to be able to link this back into some of the success stories and other places that we've visited. So we've been to the Ballinderry Rivers Trust, like to visit them, and they've implemented some of these pretty perfectly. We're in the process of making a short video that we are intending to link through to the toolkit, so we can show the farmers these, how it applies to their farm, but also show them elsewhere where these have been implemented with success. So in the Ballinderry, they were able to reintroduce juvenile pearl mussels due to one of the things being riparian zones, but also soil testing and fencing and pasture pumps as well. But the riparian zones are the land adjacent to river courses that have a potential to improve water quality by filtering out sediment, fertilizers and pesticides before they reach the water. Tend to be a 2 to 4 metre, extending 2 to 4 metres from stream or river, fenced off from the livestock to prevent them from entering the water courses. So naturally this improves the water quality. It supports biodiversity, as I've said, with the example in Ballinderry as well. And it creates wildlife corridors as well, so it allows the wildlife to move from area to area. And we especially want to link these up. We're talking about networks. We want to link these up. It was seen from the catchment, the north, the mid and the south. We want to let the wildlife travel throughout. There's a reduced flood risk when we use the riparian zones properly. They slow the entry of the water into the water courses. Whenever we take that and extrapolate it out, use it amongst many farms, the effect is much better. This is not only important for the wildlife, it's important for people too. It provides recreational potential, and it's a relatively low cost setup. And we've just pointed out again there for farmers to talk to DAERA. It's an agri-environment measure in Northern Ireland and a forestry measure in Ireland. And some helpful websites are placed throughout the toolkit. So Agricology has plenty of online resources for farmers who are interested. The riparian zones, hedgerow restoration. Hedgerows are in a state of decline across the island. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to maintain these and return them to full functioning capacity. So again, a BGI that was identified as being possible within the catchment. We are pointing out to farmers that this has a beneficial reduction in field erosion. It can boost the farm income through payments through the EFS. It offers livestock protection from disease. I know TB can benefit from hedgerow and tree planting as well. And impressively, it can reduce the wind speeds over an area 30 times their size. Again, trying to put in facts that maybe catch the eye of the farmer. These will create wildlife corridors, important for birds, pollinators, all sorts. And again, a relatively low cost. It's something that's wanted to be protected within Ireland as well for its rural history and aesthetics, but it also importantly addresses climate change. So we're just trying to show the farmers multiple benefits and how it can affect their farm as well. Tree planting, I have just had a nice meeting with Professor Jim McAdam, who is an ex-colleague at AFBI. He is probably one of the leaders in agroforestry, and not according to him, I think from his point of view, this is really going to take off to quite a large scale. But the trees are obviously good for nature. They reduce the surface runoff. They can reduce the impact of farming practices on the water courses. There's studies in Canada and France that have reduced nitrate leaching by 46% and 30% respectively. We again know that similar to the hedges, these can provide 30 times the protection from the wind. And importantly, there are no negative effects for farm productivity up until 12 years after planting. This was a little fact from Professor Jim McAdam, and it actually wasn't that the trees then reduced productivity on the farm after that. They took the scheme in a different direction, so it's possible that even after this 11 or 12 years that there still wouldn't be a detrimental effect on the farm. We know that there are payments from DAERA and the Woodland Trust are heavily involved in this. The Irish Agroforestry Forum is a useful website for farmers to access. It's just been set up. It's a team of over 40 people who are available for answering questions for anyone who is interested in tree planting. And these can answer technical questions for the farmers from practical measures, how to keep the trees, what species they should be using, just any questions the farmers might have. So again, another good link into the toolkit that allows farmers to get relevant information. Floodwater storage. At the minute, I don't think we can have this covered by the EFS in Northern Ireland, but it is something that is being looked at. These ponds have been used very successfully over in Scotland for one of our case studies that we will again link into the toolkit, show the farmers how these ponds have been used in Scotland to positive effect. Basically in Carlingford we have a very real risk of, or the Carlingford catchment, sorry, a very real risk of flood damage. So looking into floodwater storage in the upper parts of the catchment, I think from Graham's modelling yesterday, we saw that it's an area that we could target. And it doesn't just have to be upper catchment. We've seen in the Tweed that they've used these floodwater storage measures down in the lower catchment and to possibly even greater effect. So we saw again down by the southeast coast, there was a big potential for floodwater storage ponds here. Pointing out to the farmers that if they do have poor quality land, that this can reduce the widespread flooding. It can be a more localized event on their farm. And it can improve water quality and support biodiversity. But importantly, reduce the flood risk, especially in down catchment sites within our catchment area. This is about it for the toolkit. So we've got a few useful documents at the end. We still want to build on this. I think importantly today we want to get feedback on any ways that we can link in to other organizations, get information and tie people together for the farmers and just produce this booklet that gives them hopefully a one-stop shop for all the key information they might need.